The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
we are now about to witness the truth.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome. Oh, wow. That's a little hot. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Tuesday, January 17, 2017. Thank you so much for joining us. We took off yesterday in honor of Great Americans Day. At least that's what they celebrate in Biloxi, Mississippi. They can't bring themselves to actually celebrate Dr. King's Day, so they figure they can get away with this milk toast. What the hell? Like we're not going to notice that you're afraid to celebrate Dr. King in Mississippi of all places. And I grew up in Mississippi. I stayed in Mississippi until my freshman year in high school, from like 7 years old or 6 years old to so I know Mississippi well. There's a lot of good things in Mississippi, but that was not one of them. But if I'm going to tell you that half of the story, I will tell you that the city of Biloxi voted on yesterday to change the title of January 6th, or second Monday in, I believe it was the third Monday, whatever, to change it to Martin Luther King Day. They finally decided, because of pressure from Twitter, and everybody was lighting them up, and as they should have. So anyway, I didn't even mean that wasn't even on my list of things to talk about, but I talked about it because it was a spectacular crash and burn of bigotry. And I don't know if you call it hard bigotry, soft bigotry, whatever you want to call it, but it's clearly an inability to actually celebrate Dr. King, which I did yesterday, which is where I was, and here I am tonight. So welcome, and I want to thank all of my patrons. Special thanks to Alexander M. Thank you for becoming a patron. Thanks to Alan E. becoming a patron. And did I read this already? I feel like, or is this just another great name? Street Fight Radio. Thanks for becoming a patron. Erica and Adrian and Tim. Thank you all for becoming patrons over the weekend. If you want to become a patron and get access to our bonus show, which we consistently do on Fridays, we no longer, I'm just going to be honest with you, maybe I'm too honest sometimes, but it's pretty obvious. We no longer do a consistent nightly bonus show. It's because, at the end of, anyway, but Friday, you can count on a full hour bonus show like clockwork. Ask any patrons. And if you want to get access to that, go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and sign up to become a patron. You can sign up for $3 a month. I mean, that's like buying me not even liquor. That's like buying me a bottle of water in Boston. So I'm thirsty. Could you guys? Anyway, all right, let's talk about some news. Actually, before I do that, on Thursday, we will be heading down to D.C. Solidarity.rocks. Thanks to everyone who donated to get us to our goal. We are frugal at the Progressive Army. We know how to make stuff stretch. So what you may have raised, for one individual to do one thing, we're deploying like 6 members of the Progressive Army to DC to cover the event, to cover this. Yeah, this event. Let's just call it that. This event. All right. And so it's going to be Anoa Changa, Michael Solomon, myself, Alexander the Meh, and a couple other people on Thursday night in DC. We will be having a meet and greet. You can see the flyer on any of our timelines on Twitter or Facebook, or go to the website, cundc.com or solidarity.rocks. You can find out more information at any of those locations. And that's it. You know what? And I have not even logged into my phones, but we will be able to take calls shortly, 857-600-0518, if you want to join the conversation, and we'll get to the news and get your input. Now, all of that out of the way, this has been an amazing news day. The first thing that has to be talked about is the fact that President Obama has pardoned or issued a commutation for Chelsea Manning. Chelsea Manning has been in jail for the past 7 years since she leaked a trove of documents to WikiLeaks. She was serving a 35-year sentence, and Chelsea became kind of the flashpoint for whistleblowers and transparency and radical transparency. And there are quite a few voices on the left, not Democratic voices, but voices on the left who have rallied behind her and put pressure on President Obama to issue a commutation. And so in May, she still has to stay in jail from now until May, but I'm sure this is overwhelmingly encouraging for her because she does not have to serve the full 35 years, of which the judge said that they were going to make an example, or the tribunal, whoever the military tribunal wanted to make an example of her. Chelsea was convicted underneath the Espionage Act, which was passed in the early 20th century by Woodrow Wilson. It's quite a nefarious act, and we still use it to put pressure on government employees who would be whistleblowers, who would try to bring transparency to improve the American government, but the American government kicks back and does not want to be improved in that fashion. President Obama has, I believe in 2014, between 2008 and 2014, used the Espionage Act more than all previous administrations, just in the first 6 years of his administration. So as transparent as President Obama claimed that he wanted to be, there was a particular type of transparency. It was the type of transparency that they approved of, which is understandable. Power concedes nothing. Power doesn't want to be beholden to anyone, especially not a, lowly, contractor like Snowden or, they don't want to be held accountable to people who actually participate in the activities that America should know about. So I'm not surprised that President Obama wanted or claimed to be transparent and then utilized, because the establishment, and I'm not talking about the political establishment, I'm actually talking about the institution. The American institution will always protect itself, no matter how good of intentions a person say they have, or no matter what intentions they actually have. Even if he had good intentions, the American institution was going to protect itself. But never mind relitigating that at this point. I mean, there's still people who should be released. And there still should be protections for whistleblowers, but this is a pretty victorious day that President Obama, he didn't have to do this. This is 100% his prerogative, and he chose to do so. President Obama also pardoned 67 people and a total of 207 commutations. Included in the pardon was General Cartwright. You may remember Cartwright pleaded guilty to leaking classified information regarding the U.S. and Israeli cyber attack against the Iranian nuclear program, also known as Stuxnet, which was, it was pretty impressive. All things, just as a complete aside, the worm, the virus, I call it a virus, but a worm that they used to spin Iranian centrifuges out of control. Setting back their nuclear program. I think Cartwright thought it was pretty dope as hell, too. That's why he ended up saying it. I can't really think of any other reason he would leak that to the press, but I digress. The point is, he has also been pardoned. So with today's 209 grants of commutation, the president has commuted sentences of over 1,300 individuals. And the most grants of commutation issued by any president in the nation's history. So by the 12 presidents combined. So President Obama is just letting them out. I mean, compared to previous administrations, President Obama is letting them out. Manning was convicted underneath, of course, her crime was she copied hundreds of thousands of military incident logs from the Afghan and Iraq wars. She exposed abuses of detainees by Iraqi military officers. She showed that civilian deaths in the Iraq war were probably higher than the official count. And it also included about 250,000 diplomatic cables from American embassies around the world. The response to this has been staggering. Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, has come out and pretty consistent with his position all along, full-throated condemnation of President Obama's commutation of Chelsea Manning, even going as far as saying that this sets a dangerous precedent. I'm not sure how this sets a precedent because it's a presidential pardon, right? It's not like we are changing the law for a particular individual. This is just something that a president has the prerogative and the right to do. So there's not really a precedent that is being set. And it's not as though someone can say, oh, I'll go ahead and be a whistleblower and maybe Donald Trump will pardon me. That's when you believe that there's a precedent being set, you believe that there are behaviors that are being encouraged by our law. I don't think anyone in their right mind will say that the narrative or the lesson and the moral of this story is that all you have to do is wait for the presidential pardon, which is complete. And then there's been the reaction from the Democratic establishment that was vested in opposition towards Chelsea Manning because this happened on the watch of President Obama. And by that, I expressly mean you have Democrats who normally, you know, if this had been underneath President Bush, I believe I heard Glenn Greenwald said this, if Snowden occurred under President Bush, Snowden would be the quintessential Democratic hero. But because it occurred underneath Barack Obama, of course, he is an enemy of the state, and Democrats become far more hawkish again with regard to whistleblowers. Same thing with Chelsea Manning. You have Democrats, you have voices, not Democrats, leaders. Usually the leaders will stay in line and go along with what the president says and does. But you have some loud voices in the blogosphere who condemn this because they don't know how to handle the cognitive dissonance of this person doing something tacitly to President Obama and then President Obama pardoning this person. They can't handle that. It's like it's going to make their heads explode. So you're seeing a full range of responses. But ultimately, I think this is a good move. I think this is the right move. I think this, if nothing else, the human rights violations that the treatment of Chelsea at the hands of her, I want to say captors, right? But that's not the accurate word, but you understand what I'm saying. So this is a good move, and this is a good mark for President Obama for progressives, and we have every right to measure President Obama based on our expectations, because what the hell else are we going to do, right? People say, oh, it's absurd. Oh, now you like President Obama. No, I don't necessarily like President Obama. I like this decision. So, yes, I like this decision. Could have came sooner, but it happened, and only 6 more months or 5 more months for Chelsea to wait to be released. All right, 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. We'll also be talking about Paul LePage, Cory Booker, and his pharmaceutical nonsense that is going on, and Betsy DeVos. It's going to be interesting seeing the confirmation hearings, particularly with Cory Booker. And I'll talk about this more in a second, but I'm really curious if Cory Booker is going to be as outspoken with Betsy DeVos. I don't know why I keep wanting to say DeVros, like from Doctor Who, the Lord of the Dialects. But I am really curious to see what Cory Booker is going to say with Betsy DeVos, because he's in lockstep. Matter of fact, I think they serve on a board together, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll get to that momentarily. Again, the number to call in if you want to join the conversation is 857-600-0518. I want to take a second and congratulate the team at the Louisa Project, streaming live previous to today's show. We love it when the team and the plan comes together. You guys, be sure to check out all of the talent that we have at the Progressive Army. The Progressive Army is growing. The Progressive Army we have some very exciting things on the horizon, and we just keep getting talented people, man. We get talented writers, talented hosts, and to be honest with you, I I'm super excited about it because I always like surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me. And of course, I'm an asshole. I'm arrogant, and I think that's a very difficult task. But I have managed. I don't know how. It's the forces of the universe. Like, I'm surrounded with super smart people who I think are smarter than me, and they make me better. So that's a really special thing to have a team like the Progressive Army working with us. All right, I think I finally got the phone lines. I've talked long enough to get the phone lines going. Call it. You're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben, it's me, Jared from downtown PA.
Jared, I could barely hear you. I don't know if you could speak a little closer to your microphone.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better. What's on your mind, Jared?
Yeah, I want to talk about the pardon of Chelsea Manning. That I can't even remember the last good thing he's done. He's done just so much horrible stuff lately. It's been crazy, but yeah, this is definitely one of the more better things we should probably remember him for. But I don't want to let him off the hook, though, because Manning is only in jail because of Obama in the first place for arresting her for revealing war crimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got into an argument with Tom Hartman today on his radio show when I was talking about war crimes, and I brought up that Trump should be arrested for war crimes, and he said, well, you'd have to arrest Obama and Bush. And I said, well, we should also put Bill Clinton and Carter on the list as well.
Jesus.
And then he was like, okay, we got to end this call very quickly. And then I was like, okay, I think I've caused enough.
I mean, if we go
deep water.
Yeah, if we go that route, then we can't have a president of the United States because we'd have to arrest each and every one of them after each administration is over. But go ahead. Let me let you finish your point. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'd have to arrest the whole government, basically, though. But what I wanted to get to was there's still people in jail that shouldn't be in jail. I mean, you got Don Siegelman,
Yep.
Who's still rotting in a federal prison. You got who's the Black Panther in Philadelphia? He's in my state. You know the name, right? The Black Panther guy.
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry. I'm multitasking, but go ahead.
Yeah, we need to get him out of jail. Snowden's another one on the list that needs a pardon. There's a Native American activist that needs a pardon.
So there
well.
are.
I forget who.
To be sure, there are a lot of people who are who have been tried underneath the Espionage Act who, quite frankly, should not be. Particularly those who have served as whistleblowers, they should not be in prison. And so, no, it's not. This is not a way of getting President Obama, quote unquote, off the hook. But we should pause and just be, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that happened, and we'll celebrate it. That. Thanks, Jared, for the call. It's always a pleasure. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. All right, let me cover a couple of other stories. Let's talk about Paul LePage. Paul LePage is our favorite. Paul LePage is, I don't even know how to describe this guy other than he is the most blind to his own racist. Like, he genuinely does not believe that he's a racist piece of shit. I guess because he's a governor of Maine and he feels like, I'm not a racist. I've got black kids that I've adopted. Well, yeah, that doesn't preclude you from being a racist piece of shit. You remember Paul LePage was the one who referred to the drug dealers who come up from New York and they get the white girls pregnant. And he referred to them as shifty and D-money. And later on, he was like, and I'm like, what? First of all, what human being refers to themselves as shifty and D-money? Like, if you're gonna try to parody black or gangster culture or whatever the hell they're gonna call it, if you want to parody it, at least be up to date. Like, when's the last time someone referred to anyone as D-money anything? But I digress. he used that as a way of lamenting the rise in young girl pregnancies at the hands of drug dealers by the name of D-Money and Shifty. But he said, I'm not a racist. This is who we're dealing with, a guy who is a full-throated piece of crap. I'll stop referring to him as a piece of shit, even though he is. But he's managed to one-up himself in the most spectacular way. LePage said in regards to John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis of Atlanta, he said that Lewis should say thank you to the Republican presidents. Instead of fighting Donald Trump or calling Donald Trump illegitimate, he should thank Republicans because of, wait for it, Abraham Lincoln. Here's the full quote. He said, I would just say this. John Lewis ought to look at history. It was Abraham Lincoln that freed the slaves. It was Rutherford B. Hayes and Ulysses S. Grant who fought against Jim Crow laws. Well, Jim Crow laws lasted a whole lot longer than Ulysses S. Grant, but I'll finish this quote. A simple thank you would suffice. For some reason, the left has become so hateful, and so they are trying to bully us out of believing our Constitution. A simple thank you would suffice. I'm going to be honest with you, Governor LePage. You should be glad that we even refer to you as a human being. Thank you to who? Donald Trump? You know, I don't even know if this warrants a dissection of the logical fallacy. Yeah, it doesn't, but I have to. I'm compelled to. Number one, if you think that the Republican Party today is any way, form, fashion, or form or fashion connected to the Republican Party of Lincoln's day, ask yourself, who are the Confederate flag waving Klansmen of the South aligned with now? And not even about them being Klansmen so much as they are champions of the Confederacy against which Lincoln waged an entire civil war. So how, Governor LePage, if you know history, how would it be possible for the Republican Party of today to be the same Republican Party of Lincoln when Lincoln waged an entire war against the Confederacy? But yet and still, we have the modern Republican Party who are the heir apparent and the protectors of the legacy of the Confederacy. So logically, it just does not follow. And I don't even know why I'm wasting my time with people like this, because they clearly don't subscribe to any logic other than confirmation biases and everything else. But that's number one. Number two, even if it was the same party, which it's not, even if it was the same progressive ideas of Lincoln, which it clearly is not, what he did in the fighting the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation, what he did does not remove our ability to criticize the Republican Party today. You do not get an eternal pass, right? It's kind of like you say, ask him. He's going to say, LePage, he's going to say, why are you still talking about slavery? Why are you that was 500 years ago. So you want us to forget about slavery, but now at the same time, we need to thank you for something Abraham Lincoln did? No, that's not how it works.
I unfriend you.
That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. But it's not even a logical thing here, right? I just have to break it apart because it's just the pet peeve of mine. It's the gall. It's the unmitigated gall to say that anyone should thank the Republican Party instead of criticizing them for their intransigence, for their unprecedented opposition towards President Obama, for their fostering of this alt-right movement that is nothing more than neo-Nazis in dapper apparel. They have fostered this sentiment in the United States. They have made the greatest division of race in American history in our lifetime, at a minimum in our lifetime, and yet they blame that divide on black people. They want to simultaneously attack us and blame us for the racial divide. So it's just this nerve that if he, well, he's an elected official, so I'm not going to finish saying what I want to say. But no thank yous will be issued. We're just going to read you your rights. We're going to read you your rights because you're clearly have become drunk on your own bigotry, your own stupidity, and your own arrogance, and your own hubris to think that somebody now. And personally, I'm not a fan of John Lewis. I think everybody can know that. I like John Lewis previous for his work, and I've met him, take pictures with him, but I'm not a fan of John Lewis. But I'm even less of a fan of white supremacy wrapped up in a suit and tie sitting in the governor's seat. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, man, this is Bryce. What's going on?
Hey, Bryce, always a pleasure, man.
Doing good. So I'm happy that Chelsea is free, and I'm happy that he's commentating, getting people out, and doing a lot of things. Obviously, there's a couple of days left, so you might as well do what you got to do.
Yeah.
And do the right things. And I feel his presidency has been 50-50. It's been some good, it's been some bad in between. We've had these conversations before, though, but I'm happy that he is doing these things that he's doing. And as far as your last point, yeah, I mean, this is sad that we have these people in office because it just doesn't work, and it's why the policies that we have suck. But 2 quick points, though. We haven't had a hashtag in about 2 months, thank God. And we had a black president for 8 years without getting shot. Thank God. Thank God for that.
That is a measuring stick. That is a bar. I mean, I'm not going to tell you how many black people, let's be real. Let's just be real for a second. How many of us were on pins and needles for 8 years wondering if President Obama was going to make it all 8 years? I'm going to be honest with you. Like, set aside the disagreements politically, I always worried about whether or not President Obama would make it 8 years. So here's to President Obama and the Secret Service and people making it happen. President Obama made it all through the 8 years. Knock on wood. We only have a couple more days. Obama, get the hell out of D.C. Get the hell out of there and lay low and just lay low. I know you got the Secret Service for the rest of your life, but I'm just saying, like, we just need you to survive because we just that's the kind of stuff black people have to worry about because we had we just knew. Remember the movie with Chris Rock and Bernie Mac where Chris Rock ran for president? And it was just a running gag in the movie. Like, it was an assumption that the first black president would not make it through. And even there was a scene at the end where Chris Rock had a doppelganger, a body double, who actually ended up getting shot because he was president of the United States. And we can laugh about it at this point, but I'm even now, right now, I'm still skittish even about joking about it because it's like we still have a long 4 days. Right? We still got 4 days and we just want him to make it. Like that's the the bar is pretty low. We just want Obama to survive. And so, Bryce, I'm glad you brought that up because I never really talked about that. But that is a fear in the back of the minds, probably of more than just black Americans, to be honest with you, because we have such a rich legacy. And I guess that's not as good sounding. It's not as good of a sound. And that's not the best phrase to categorize it. But we have a rich legacy of political. I don't even want to say the words. That's how skittish and superstitious black folks are about the first black president. And so I'm just like, oh God, 4 days, get him out of New York, out of DC, and get him wherever he needs to be. Get him somewhere on a golf course, and that way we can focus all of our hate on Donald Trump and neoliberals. Anyway, in other news, let's talk about Betsy DeVos. DeVos, I don't know how she pronounces her name. So Betsy DeVos, who's a billionaire, she is Trump's pick for Secretary of Education. Her confirmation hearings, they either begin, I think they begin tomorrow, but she's going to be in the middle of these confirmation hearings soon. She was the she was over education at the Christian school in Michigan. Her mother was a public school teacher. Her husband is the heir to an Amway fortune, which is probably the reason she's a billionaire. Her core issue is school choice. And that's a really nice way of saying taking public funds to give to private companies to undermine public education. At least that's my take on it. But she has no public school experience. She does have private school experience. She's going after deregulation of charter schools. She is the perfect person in line to, if you want to forward charter schools at the expense of public schools, she is the perfect person to do it. And it looks as though she is just a continuation in Donald Trump's effort, his unashamed effort at gutting as many public institutions as he possibly can while he's president of the United States. So anyway, her key issues are school choice. She heads up the pro-charter and pro-school voucher nonprofit American Federation for Children. Trump has proposed creating a $20 billion federal voucher program for families to use to send their kids to school, to the school of their choice. She has poured, her family at least has poured $1.45 million into an effort to prevent Michigan from adding oversight to charter schools. So not only do they want to take the funding from public schools, put it over to charter schools, she wants to deregulate charter schools and to remove oversight of charter schools. So in addition to that, she's funded a group that pushes conversion therapy for LGBTQ individuals. She stated today that though that she doesn't believe in it. It's a little problematic still that you funded and supported groups that push this very dangerous and extremely harmful ideology. Randy Whitengarden, who's the head of one of the nation's largest teachers unions, said that DeVos is the, quote, most ideological anti-public education nominee since the start of the Department of Education. It seems hyperbolic, but if you look at all of the nominees, if you look at all of the secretaries of education, that's a pretty accurate statement. Bernie Sanders had to say about it, do you think if you were not a multi-billionaire, if your family had not made hundreds of millions of dollars of contributions to the Republican Party, that you would be sitting here? Bernie Sanders had no chill with that at all whatsoever. If I get my claps to play. So the Democrats plan on grilling, according to CNN, they plan on, quote, grilling DeVos on college affordability, transgender issues in schools and for-profit colleges. I'm just curious which Democrats are going to do the grilling, because most assuredly it won't come from Cory Booker, who is the leading Democrat on voucher programs and charter schools. That's his thing. That's what he believes in. And we can guarantee that we will not see anything remotely close to what he did with Sessions. And of course, they're two different people and there's two different issues, two different, right? But you can see that Cory Booker is definitely willing to stand up and call someone a racist, but he's not going to stand up and say your policies are detrimental to public schools, which many African Americans depend on. He's not going to say that. So this will be interesting. Even more interesting than that is going to be to see how people who have large platforms, large influencers across social media and the political ecosystem, how they are going to defend Cory Booker from his alliances with Betsy DeVos. This is going to be a fascinating intersection for us to experience, because we're going to see the charter school sycophants in the Democratic Party come to the front to support any allegations against Cory Booker and his relationship with DeVos, but they're not going to support Betsy DeVos because she's a Republican, right? She's coming in underneath a Republican president, but she's doing the exact damn thing that Cory Booker wants done. So they won't attack Cory Booker for doing the same exact thing, but somehow they're going to have to find a way to attack Betsy DeVos for doing the same exact thing. And we see, based on their formula, according to CNN, that they're going to grill her on college affordability, transgender issues in school, which is a serious issue, and for-profit colleges. Those are good issues. But it does not address the number one issue that she is being recruited for. She can skate by on these issues. She can give some milquetoast statement about college affordability and pacify the people. She could talk about transgender rights because you just, unless you're just a deep down in your heart a bigot, you can't bring yourself to saying, unless that's her, she's going to skate by on that with some really, bland statement against bigotry. She's going to get past the question of for-profit colleges. But her number one issue is defunding public schools through a voucher program, which takes funds from already critically unstable schools. Like, they're unstable because they're improperly funded. They're underfunded. They're funded based on property taxes. And what do you expect in poor communities that don't have values? Their homes don't have the values of rich communities, so they're already underfunded, and now they want to take the funds from there and give it to private institutions under the guise of school choice. Listen, I get it. I taught at public schools. I taught at charter schools. I get the tension between teachers and the teachers union, and the political establishment. I get that the teachers union normally aligns with the Democratic Party, and this is one of the reasons this has become a baby of the Republican Party, because if they can do this, if they can defund public schools, then they can permanently damage and destroy teachers unions. Of course, they're not going to completely defund it, but they can underfund it such that it closes hundreds of schools. Look at Chicago. Look at New Orleans. There's not one public school in New Orleans. They're all charter schools. So I get the different tensions. I get the argument. I get why we have to do something. But the something that they are proposing, people like DeVos and Cory Booker, what they're proposing is not a solution. It's just a means of privatizing public school with public funds. This is the wet dream of conservatives and neoliberals, to privatize all of the profits and pay for it with public funds, and then socialize all of the losses with bailouts. So we'll see how this goes and how this plays for Betsy DeVos. With these questions, though, I don't see her having any problem making it in. She's going to do just fine, because these aren't serious questions. These are not questions that challenge the core issue for which she cannot give platitudes to skirt around. Right? If you ask her about vouchers, if you ask her about, the charter schools, that is who she is she's going to state vehemently. She's going to state it very unequivocally. She's going to make it known what she believes. So the issue for her is not going to be to get around questions about transgender rights. She can give some platitudes and get past that. The real question that they should ask would be, what is her solution for the problem of public school underfunding based on property taxes without defunding it further through vouchers? That's the question. And if she's the Secretary of Education, she should have an answer to that question. But that would mean we have, well, let's see what Bernie Sanders, maybe Bernie Sanders will bring something to the mix. How much time do we have here? Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, this is Brianna.
Hey, Brianna, what's on your mind?
Nothing much. I'm just going to say that this should not be this shocking that Trump picked somebody like DeVos to run education. He's doing a really good job picking people who have no idea what departments are running.
Exactly.
And who basically just wants to destroy it.
Exactly.
And it's it's almost like here's a scenario, like, Like, you buy a new car for your son or daughter who's like 13, 14. You just give them keys and you just pass them cars. You don't give them no lessons at all, and they just drive and hit some mailbox. That's the Trump presidency for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
And
That's
he's gonna wreck America, and that's not good at all for us. And
I mean, of course it's not good. It's definitely not good for America, but I agree with you. It looks like that's exactly his goal, to put the most irresponsible people, the people who know the least about their departments. I mean, we're talking about Ben Carson and HUD. We're talking about Rick Perry and the Department of Energy. Right. At least Betsy DeVos has some experience in education. It's just absolutely the wrong experience for public education.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and just watching Cory Booker's name get dragged through the mud for the last 7 days has been pretty cool.
Yeah.
By progressives. It's like, we can't let him run in 2020. If he does, we got to crush him.
Oh yeah, no. If he runs, the Democrats have already lost. Thanks for the call, Brianna. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation as we make our way through all of these issues. Special shout out to the YouTube chat room. We see you over there. Quite a few people are participating. Joseph, Terry, Fritz, all of you, if you want to join the conversation, go to youtube.com and go to the Benjamin Dixon Show channel, and you can participate in the conversation in the chat. This live chat is also open on Spreaker, the internet radio show. So leave your comments there, and we'll incorporate those that we can. All right. Speaking of Cory Booker, it's been a fascinating day. It's been a fascinating day seeing people do their best to defend the honor, I guess, of Cory Booker. Cory Booker, who last week stepped into a pile of political shit over his vote against an amendment that was aiming to lower the cost of prescriptions by allowing the importation of prescription drugs from Canada. The problem with not just the problem was the vote against it. Now, most people can agree that the amendment that was forwarded by Bernie Sanders and I can't remember the other senator's name. The problem, or not the problem, but most people can concede that amendment was symbolic, because it really stood very little chance of passing until it almost had a chance of passing, right? You had 13 Republicans who signed onto it. I mean, and then you had 12 Democrats who voted against it, Cory Booker leading the way. So, you know, even though it was symbolic, it actually had a chance of passing as in the amendment form. Would it have passed the Senate? Very unlikely. Would it have passed the reconciliation between the House and the Senate? Probably not at all, mainly because just about everyone is in bed with the corporate lobby. Everybody but Bernie Sanders, and we'll talk about that in a second. So the policy itself has widespread support amongst Americans, and the fact that Cory Booker was the most well-known senator to vote against it led to what one article referred to as the public crucifixion. I digress. So here's the thing. So he said that he supports the importation of prescription drugs, but that any plan to allow the importation of prescription medications should also include consumer protections that ensure foreign drugs meet American safety standards. He said, I oppose an amendment put forward last night because it didn't meet this test. Now, this is besides the fact that he just voted against it. It's this completely erroneous excuse, and weak excuse at that actually caused most of the backlash that most of us today are familiar with, because they've been dragging Cory all weekend, and I completely, wholeheartedly co-sign with the political dragging of Cory Booker over this issue. I mean, I'd co-sign any political dragging of Cory Booker, because Cory Booker has shown himself to be the quintessential neoliberal multiculturalist, the guy who wants to work on identity politics only and wants to be an economic conservative. He wants to be the Wall. I mean, he has so many donations. He is the pick of Wall Street. He is the pick of the pharmaceutical industry lobby. He has shown his loyalty so much so that he could not be an effective surrogate for President Obama in 2012 against Bain Capital because it was so deeply rooted in him to protect venture capitalists that he actually went against President Obama. I mean, that's some deep shit when you can't even be partisan because of your connections to corporate lobbyists. Like, I mean, partisanship is one of the worst problems in America, the hyper-partisanship at that. But you would expect someone high profile like Cory Booker to play by the rules. I mean, it wasn't like we were running a primary, Obama versus, Ralph Nader or something. It was a unified party. Obama was the president. Everybody hands on deck to stop Mitt Romney. Bain Capital presented the best opportunity to show the alleged differences that didn't really pan out to be differences, but that's a different story. This was the best attack line, and Cory Booker gets on national television and says that President Obama needs to stop attacking Mitt Romney on Bain Capital. Now, what kind of bullshit is that? You are so connected to corporate interests that you can't even be a hyperpartisan. This shows you where his loyalties lie. And so that's why I co-sign on any public political dragging of Cory Booker, because he's 4 years, he's 8 years too late, right? Right. The neoliberal identity only politics, that was 2008. Actually, it wasn't even 2008. It was closer to, that's 2016, to be honest with you. 2008, Obama ran as a populist. So let me scratch that. Let me go. Obama ran as a straight populist in 2008. Cory Booker wants to run on the ability to say, I'm black, I'm cool, I'm young, I connect with millennials, and Wall Street is funding me all the way. And here's the thing. His criticism itself, and this is why he was getting dragged around the country. It doesn't add up. Most of the drugs that were going to be imported from Canada were originally manufactured in the United States in the first place. The amendment's text states that the imported prescription drugs must be safe and affordable. And it conducted by American pharmacists, wholesalers, individuals. This is actually text from the amendment itself. It said it must be conducted by American pharmacists, wholesalers, and individuals with a valid prescription from a provider licensed to practice in the United States. How much safer could you get? So it was the clear notion. It was no. Let me start that sentence over. It was clear from his weak excuse that he did not have a valid reason, or he did not have a reason that he can publicly divulge for voting against this amendment. Now, this should be the end of the story. For most liberals, progressives, for a lot of us, it is. However, you've had an onslaught of people who have turned the corner to come and defend the honor of their next great neoliberal hero by trying to tie Bernie Sanders to this, even though he wasn't the only sponsor of this legislation. He wasn't even the lead sponsor of this legislation. But if you could tie Bernie Sanders to it, you could find a way to make this about Bernie Sanders, race, and all the other bullshit that they've been running. So they've tied Bernie Sanders to this. And I've heard everything from Bernie Sanders intentionally did this because he wants to run in 2020 when he's going to be like 145 years old. And he did this to block Cory Booker because he didn't want Cory Booker to be a challenge to him. Like, this is the depth of conspiracy theory that we have gotten to, not by random egg Twitter accounts, but by people who lead actual organizations with millions of dollars of funding. All right. And you've got people, influencers with, like DeRay McKesson, who shared completely unfactual, untruthful information trying to muddy the waters between Cory Booker and Bernie Sanders with regard to donations from the pharmaceutical, quote unquote, industry, trying to say that Bernie Sanders has taken just as much from the pharmaceutical industry as Cory Booker. two major distinctions there, and I have not seen DeRay correct this. I would rather be correct than to be an effective cog in this machine. Two huge distinctions. Bernie Sanders received almost $300,000 from people who work for the pharmaceutical industry, people who are employed by the pharmaceutical industry, people who have jobs in that industry, individuals, not corporate lobbyists. Cory Booker received his money from corporate lobbyists. If you can't tell the difference between receiving money from lobbyists who are representing the interest of the industry at the expense of the individual and donations from individuals who work in the industry, then you're not qualified to be in the conversation about politics. This goes across the board. Or you're just being a political propagandist, and we have to treat you entirely different than giving you the benefit of the doubt of ignorance. Number two, even if it was apples to apples, money from corporate lobbyists, which it is not, Bernie Sanders ran a presidential campaign. He ran a 50-state campaign against Hillary Clinton. Cory Booker ran for Senate. Don't get me wrong. I know it costs maybe, in Florida, it costs about $10 million to run for Senate. So you have to raise a lot of money, but it can cost you upwards of $500 million to run for president of the United States. So even if it was from corporate lobbyists, which it was not, there's a qualitative and a quantitative difference in this story. The quantitative difference is the fact that Bernie Sanders was running a nationwide campaign. The qualitative difference is while Cory Booker was running a Senate race in the small state of New Jersey. A lot of people, yeah, but not as much ground to cover as other states. It's an expensive media market, so let me not be disingenuous. I get it. Partly. The qualitative difference is, as I have already stated, there's a difference between receiving money from individuals and there's a difference between receiving money from corporate interests. And the vote that Cory Booker made reflects his interests are not the individual, but the corporation. Oh, yeah, but Cory Booker voted for the Wyman Amendment. Well, I tell you what, we'll tackle the Wyman Amendment tomorrow. We're having an article written for ProgressiveArmy.com by an attorney who's knee deep in this issue, going over the amendments. So I'm going to let her write the article first before I pretty much give up everything that she's written. I'm going to give full disclosure. This is her wonderful research and dissection. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, and I want you to make sure that you read the article at ProgressiveArmy.com as soon as it is released. But more than anything else, I'm just really, really fascinated by the Democrats and the firewall who come out, and no matter what, they can use Bernie Sanders as a means of making the issue about race against people who are doing things that are detrimental not only to black people, but to all Americans. This is a standard play, and they've been doing it all since the primaries. 857-600-0518 if you want to join the conversation. I've got a couple more stories and not much time at all. No amount of time. All right. Yeah, but I do want to cover this story. I have to cover this. Third Way Democrats. On Tuesday, the think tank Third Way launched a $20 million campaign entitled New Blue, which would study how the Democratic Party lost its way to seek and seeks to offer a new agenda for future Democrats. This is according to the Washington Post. The Third Way is supported Democratic think tank. It's a supposed Democratic think tank. It relies mostly on money from corporate interests, lobbyists, and even some Republican donors. It has criticized Mayor-elect Bill de Blasio's proposal for universal pre-K funded through an upper income tax increase, right? They've shown clearly that they are trying to move away from creating a stronger safety net. They are today's iteration of the DLC, the think tank of what the DLC would have been, right, if it was still around today. And their ultimate plan is to find ways of getting a victory or understanding their defeat to Donald Trump without making it about populism. So the $20 million would be used to conduct extensive research, reporting and polling in the Rust Belt states that were overlooked by Hillary Clinton. So I don't know how much research they need to do. Well, anyway, they plan to launch a deep dive into blue to red districts that were one time they were blue for Obama and now red for Donald Trump. Here's the problem. Democrats have lost so much ground since Obama became president. This research needs to be done, but it needs to be done in an effective way and in a way that's genuinely meant to find a path to victory. They're not looking for a path to victory. What they're looking for is a path to staying in power without having to give any credence to the progressive populist movement. That's what this $20 million is for. And so ultimately, they're just going to burn it, right? They're going to burn through it and somebody's going to get rich off of it. Some people are going to get some jobs, but ultimately, they're going to come to the same conclusion that they have right now, that the only problem with the Democratic Party is the progressive movement bothering them or the Russians. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. This is not the last we're going to hear about this, but this is how it works, right? You get large donors to, and I said this. I said a lot of people thought that the rise of Donald Trump was going to be devastating to the Democratic Party. I never thought that, because the one thing I knew would happen after Donald Trump was going to be elected, I knew that they would raise more money than they have ever seen in their lifetime. This is why you have people are hiring out the yin yang. I mean, folks are hiring at every liberal rag, every think tank. They can't get enough people to spend the money that they're raising. And I knew that the victory of Donald Trump would be a giveaway to the Democratic establishment, because they would receive an influx of money without having to reconcile why they lost. And so now they're able to do things like this, which is 100% meant to protect the establishment and to keep the progressive caucus at bay, not just the caucus, the progressive movement at bay. They're able to do this because they're awash with money. And they are flooded with money because Donald Trump won. So this idea that Donald Trump was going to actually destroy the Democratic establishment and send them over to the progressive movement so that they can learn their lesson, that was flawed. That was flawed from the beginning. That's not how this game works. The game works based on fundraising, and they can raise so much money off the groper in chief. It's obscene. All right, folks, I am almost out of time here. But based on the last story, this is why it's time for us to break up with the Democrats. And I might be one of the last people that you would have expected to say this, because I have more patience than most. And I wasn't Dem exit. I was whatever I was, but I wasn't Dem exit during the main campaign. But seeing them after the campaign, the Democratic establishment has made it clear that they want no parts of Senator Sanders or the progressive movement that his 2016 campaign revitalized. They have made it abundantly clear that their singular focus is not on rebuilding the party for the better. Rather, they are only interested in salvaging their jobs and securing their next paycheck. They have together decided that the only way that they can possibly remain relevant for their donors is to routinely regurgitate the only victory they can tout after losing in the most spectacular way to Donald J. Trump. otherwise known as the Orange Oompa Loompa man-child, who allegedly enjoys golden showers from Russian prostitutes. I mean, this is who the Democratic establishment lost to. They could not beat a man who is polling at 40% approval ratings, lower than George W. Bush, who also won the White House through an electoral victory, but a popular vote defeat. But this is who the Democratic Party establishment lost to. And the only way they can console their grief is by relitigating the primaries, incessantly attacking Bernie Sanders and progressives with smear campaigns, swift voting, and conspiracy theories. This, I'm going to be honest with you, this is almost as bad as a drunken, middle-aged, former high school football star reliving his glory days at a bar to the bartender who doesn't know whether or not it would be responsible to give this guy his fourth shot of cheap Russian vodka. This is how sad it is to me. But like that drunken football star, the only way the Democratic establishment can make it through the day is by reminiscing and replaying their Hail Mary pass to win the regional finals, otherwise known as the primaries. That was the highest watermark in an abysmal career of losing. But maybe, perhaps there's more to these relitigated attacks against progressives and Bernie Sanders. Maybe it's more than just the fact that they need to save face and preserve their careers. Perhaps these attacks are more about solidifying their control and their echo chamber by galvanizing the disillusionment of millions of voters who cannot fathom, they just cannot understand losing to the Orange Menace. And think about it. What better way to permanently remove any residual of progressivism than to target the anger of millions of voters towards Bernie Sanders and the progressive movement? Because as we all know, if it wasn't Russia that gave Donald Trump the election, then surely it was Bernie Sanders and the progressives. This is the most effective tool that the third wave Democrats have in finally purging any notion of progressivism from the ranks of the corporate Democratic Party. If they can deride anything remotely connected to progressivism, then they can successfully purge any notion of populism from the party. This is how you have legions of people, of voices who at one time supported a policy to import prescription drugs from Canada in order to lower costs, suddenly turning coat and abandoning the entire concept in order to defend Cory Booker. You accomplish this by making it an issue of Bernie Sanders versus Cory Booker. And in any way possible, you have to find a way to blame Bernie Sanders. And because of all of that, it is time for us to break up with the Democratic Party once and for all. And to be sure, when I say break up, I do not mean shouting at Democratic operatives on Twitter. I mean walking away and taking everything that we have given them. The millions of dollars in donations, the millions of actual donors and voters who supported Bernie Sanders in the primaries. We should remove our financial and physical support from the Democratic Party and use that momentum to drive a coalition so strong that neoliberals are forced to reckon with it. When I say break up, I do not mean using the hashtag DemExit. I mean actively convincing your family, your friends, your followers to join a separate movement aimed at changing America and changing the world through progressivism. It's time for us to break up with the Democratic Party once and for all, because why? Why would we stay where we are not wanted? They have made it clear that they want no parts of progressivism. They have made it clear that they would rather fight this fight without their base. They don't want us to speak up. They don't want us to participate. They want us gone. So why would we stay where we are not wanted? Quite frankly, you can have the Democratic Party. Take them and keep them. You can have Cory Booker. Please, we'll take Nina Turner. You can have Chuck Schumer. We'll take Keith Ellison. You can have Neera Tanden and the Center for American Progress, and we will take the Progressive Army. And when we think about it this way, when you put it this way, we quickly realize that the Democratic Party has been nothing but that self-centered, abusive spouse who wants us to feel so miserable about ourselves that we would be too afraid and too unsure of ourselves to ever realize that we have been doing them a favor by staying with a washed up former star. And once you realize this, it becomes so much easier for us to issue our Dear John letter to the establishment. So, dear Democrats, by the time you read these lines, we will be gone. Gone organizing a movement that you cannot control, that you cannot put in check, and most of all, you cannot silence.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.